ultimate gift. So I just summarize yesterday's reading. So yesterday we completed three chapters. So chapter one, that in that the author explained that the Red Stevens, who had distributed his wealth to the family members, his son, his daughter, and and he distributed the wealth, but he give the control of that wealth to the board or some other persons, so that they can have that wealth but managed by the other people. Similarly, her nephew Jason Steven, who was 24-year-old, he was expecting that he will receive the wealth, but he got nothing and got a mysterious ultimate gift, which was he was supposed to get on completing 12 monthly tasks. And the next chapter that we completed, the voice from the past, then the Red Stevens explained his philosophy that money without earning, it's rob the people's lives. Or if people is not earning money, he just get the money without any effort. So it will completely will not give that enjoyment to the life. So he will the particular person will not if not earning that money, then he will destroy that money or wealth. So then the Red Stevens explain how that the value of work. His friend Hamilton, who is written his will under his supervision, now that he will explain how that money can be earned to her to to his nephew Red Jason Steven. This way that they start the chapter 3, they are the first gift that he is giving the gift of work. So that way that he the Jason was sent to an ranch in Alpine, where he learned hard physical labor by digging fence, post holes, and building fences. So that way he learned that how just a labor can work, and he worked hard for 14 to 15 days there, and he understood how it is hard to earn the money. That way we completed yesterday three chapter. Now we will today start the fourth chapter. So I will present the screen. Are you able to see the screen?
Yes, yes, visible.
So fourth chapter, the gift of money. Money is nothing more than a tool. It can be a force for good, a force for evil, or simply be idle. There are certain times in this life that you find yourself pursuing a course that you are not certain will prove to be fruitful. Then, all of a sudden, out of nowhere, miraculously, you receive the smallest sign or indication that you are on a right track, just as a moment occurred when Jason Steven came in for our second monthly meeting. Jason and I were seated in our customary spots in the conference room discussing his work experience in Alpine, Texas. Miss Hastings returned from the vault carrying Red Stevens' box with no promising or for a warming. Jason got out of his chair and helped Miss Hastings by taking the box from her and carrying it to the end of table. To most people, this in and of itself would seem like nothing, or at most an extremely small things. However, I recognized how Jason had been raised and that he had always taken such minor courtesies for granted. I choose to look upon this incident, even if small, as a positive sign. Red Steven started back. at us from the large screen. He had a bit of mischievous grin on his face, which I suspect came from his private thoughts about Jason's work experience on Gus Cardwell's ranch. His voice boomed out, "Well, Jason, welcome back from the Garden of Eden, better known as Texas. Since I am walking to you now, I will assume you survived a month with Gus Cardwell. I am always found that soaking blistered hands helped. I actually heard Jason let out what might be described as a brief chuckle. Red continued, "Today we are going to talk about what may indeed be the most misunderstood commodity in the world. That is money. There is absolutely nothing that can replace money in the things that money does. But regarding the rest of the things in the world, money is absolutely useless. For example, all the money in the world won't buy you one more day of life. That's why you are watching this videotape right now. And it's important to realize that money will not make you happy. I hasten to add that poverty will not make you happy either. I have been rich and I have been poor, and all other things being equal, rich is better. And at that we are laughed. Red took on a more serious expressions and continued, "Jason, you have no idea or concept of the value of money. That is not your fault. That is my fault. But I am hoping in the next 30 days you can begin to understand what money means in the lives of real people in the real world. More of a violence, anxiety, divorce, mistrust in the world is caused by misunderstanding money than any other factor. These are concepts that are foreign to you because money to you has always seemed like the air you breathe. There's always more. All you have to do is to take the next breath. I know that you have always flashed around a lot of money and spent it frivolously. I take the responsibility for this situation because I deprived you of the privilege of understanding the fair exchange between work and money. Last month, you began to get just a inking of the pride and satisfaction that can come from doing a good job even at the most menial task. Since money is the result of most people's labor, I think you need to begin to understand it. If Gus Cardwell has paid you for the work you performed last month, you would have earned approximately $1,500. I know that it seems like almost nothing to you, but I can assure you it is the going rate. When you leave today, Mr. Hamilton will hand you an envelope that is inside the box. The envelope contains $1,500. During the next month, I want you to go out and find five different people who are in a situation where a portion of that $1,500 can make a real difference in their lives. I want you to notice how anxiety caused by a lack of money is affecting them in real ways, and how once you give them the money, they can focus on real and important issues in their world. I realize that in the past you have probably blown $1,500 in a few hours with some of your so-called friends. Now it's time to begin understanding what $1,500 can do if it's put in the right place. By the end of this month, you will report five such instances to Mr. Hamilton describing such each situation what you did about it. If Mr. Hamilton feels you have learned the lesson of the gift of money, I will talk with you next month. Red's image faded from the video screen and we sat in silence for a few moments. Jason turned to me and said, I am not sure I understand what it is I am supposed to do. Where do I find these people and how much? I interrupted him by explaining. Young man, you heard your instruction just as I did. I am not authorized to give you any additional information or assistance. This lesson, like all of the others your great uncle is trying to teach you, is one you must learn primarily yourself. I can assure you that Red Stephen was a thorough man and he has given you everything you need to succeed. I I reached into the box and took out a small envelope just as Red had described. I handed the envelope to Jason and said, we will look forward to hearing from you on or before the end of the month. Jason rose slowly with bewildered expressions on his face. He turned and slowly retreated to the door. Miss Hastings and I remained in the conference room for several minutes. Finally, she broke the silence. I don't think he has any concept of what to do with that envelope full of money. I thought for a moment and then replied, most of us have learned about money over a number of years. Jason has been absent from the school and a, he has a lot of catching up to do. It was the next to the last day of the month before we heard from the Jason, and I will admit to being a bit anxious about his progress. Jason arranged an appointment for the next morning. At the appointed hour, Miss Hastings ushered him into my office. He and Miss Hastings sat in the two leather chairs in front of my desk. Jason seemed a bit nervous and uncertain of himself. I paused for a few moments, thinking about what I might have done had I been given 1 month to find five people whose lives I could affect with money. I resigned myself to performing my task as Red Stevens' attorney and the executor of his estate. I knew that if Jason had not lived up to the letter of agreement, I would have to end the journey at that point. That was a prospectus that didn't appeal to me for Jason's sake, and I must admit for my own as well. Finally, I turned to Jason and asked, well, you young man, are you prepared to present your report? Jason nodded and drew a piece of crumbled paper from his inside jacket pocket. He cleared his throat and began to speak. Well, I am not quite sure if this is right, but here goes. Who want to go next?
Yes, I will.
Mani? Yeah.
Jason nodded and drew a piece of crumpled paper from his inside jacket pocket. He cleared his throat and began to speak slowly. Well, I am not quite sure if this is right, but here it goes. First, I was driving late one evening and passed one of those fundraising car washes people hold in parking lots. It was nearly dark, so I knew they were about done for the day. I asked the man in charge what group this was and how they were doing. He told me that it was a group of inner city Boy Scouts who were trying to raise the money to go to their Jamboree the following week. He went on to explain that it had been a bit disappointing because this was their last effort, and since they were a bit short, at least one or two of the boys were not going to be able to go. I asked him how much they needed to reach their goal. He seemed discouraged when he replied that they were almost $200 short, and they were going to have to clear the load within 10 minutes. I pulled my car into the space designated and told the boys to do their best job. When they were done, I handed one of the boys $200 and drove away. Jason looked up at me, seeking approval. I merely nodded for him to continue. Although he was still shaky, he seemed to be gaining momentum as he consulted his sheet. Next, I found myself at the mall looking for a parking space. I spotted a young woman holding a baby, standing in front of an old car and shouting at a guy driving a tow truck parked behind her. The two seemed to be really arguing, and since they had one of the best parking spaces, I stopped and asked what the trouble was. The guy told me he worked for ABC Used Cars and that the girl had missed her last two payments. He told me that the payments were only $100 a month on an old junker like that. The girl began crying and said that her baby had been sick and if she lost her car, she would not be able to keep her job. And then she didn't know what would happen. I asked the tow truck driver how much the balance was on her car loan. He told me it was four more payments of $100 each. I gave him $400 and got a paid in full receipt for the young mother. Here is a copy. Jason dropped a soiled and creased receipt on the edge of my desk and then he pressed on. While I was in the mall, I discovered a young husband and wife with two small children shopping in a toy store. Each of the children repeatedly asked for various toys, but their parents regrettably told them that Santa Claus probably would not come this year since their father had lost his job. While the children were at the end of another aisle looking at some stuffed animals. I handed the mother $300 and asked her to be sure that Santa made it to their house this year. As I was leaving the mall, I noticed an old woman sitting on a bench. As I passed, she dropped her purse, and when I picked it up to hand it back to her, I noticed that she had been crying. When I asked her what the problem was, she told me that her husband Harold and she had been married 57 years, and for the first time in their lives, they just could not make it. His heart pills cost over $60 a month, and the pharmacy in the mall would not take her food stamps for the medicine. I spent $200 buying a 3 month supply of Harold's heart medication and leaving her $20 to take him out for his favorite lunch. Jason looked at me expectantly, and I smiled at him and said, "It sounds good so far, but you were instructed to find five examples." Jason appeared more nervous than ever as he explained. While driving one day, I discovered a car broken down at the side of the road. I got out and met a young man named Brian. He is about my age, and we found we have a lot in common. I used my cell phone to call a tow truck, and they towed him into a garage. The mechanic said the engine in the car was really short and needed to be replaced. Brian was totally panicked because he needed the car to get back and forth to school and work. The mechanic said it would cost $700. Brian nearly went into shock because he didn't have any money. So I gave him the $700 he needed to get a new engine. Ever efficient Miss Hastings seemed to have an emotional quiver in her voice as she said, "Sir, that seems to add up to $1,800. I believe the original document called for only $1,500. Jason seemed alarmed as he leaned forward in his chair and said, Well, I put in $300 of my own money. Is that okay? Miss Hastings beat me to the punch and replied, of course it is okay. Mr. Hamilton is a fair and reasonable man. She glared at me and said, aren't you, Mr. Hamilton? I assured both Jason and the indomitable Miss Hastings that I was fair and reasonable, and Jason had learned an important lesson in the value of money. I hoped he would never forget his lesson. I knew I never would. Chapter 5, The Gift of Friends. It is a wealthy person indeed who calculate riches not in gold but in friends. The next morning, Miss Hastings let me know that Jason Stevens had arrived and would be waiting in the conference room. After his successful journey into the realm of work and money, I had hoped that his sullen attitude would have improved. However, upon entering the conference room, I rapidly discovered this was not the case. Before I could even sit down, he started in on me. Look, why do I have to go through all this stuff? This is ridiculous. You have a copy of the will. You must know what it is that I am going to inherit. Why don't we just cut through all the garbage and get down to the bottom line? I smiled at him and said, good morning, Jason. It is nice to see you too. I had hoped after your great uncle's lesson in money, you would be more understanding of this process. I rose to my feet slowly, which is not unusual when you are 80 years old. I gave him a stare that I had used successfully during my years as a judge. Young man, I said, you have two and only two options. You can go through this process the way Red Stevens laid it out for you, or you can quit right now. But I will tell you one thing, your attitude is putting you dangerously close to losing the ultimate gift that your great uncle planned for you. Jason leaned back in his chair and sighed. Okay, let's get on with it. He said, what's the next? Miss Hastings brought in the box and set it on the table next to me. I took out the next videotape and Miss Hastings started the VCR. Once again, Red Stevens appeared and began to speak. Jason, as you heard me tell Mr. Hamilton at your first meeting, he's quite simply my best friend. Friend is a word that is thrown around far too easily by people who don't know the meaning of it. Today, people call everyone they know their friend. Young man, you are lucky if you live as long as I have and can count your real friends on the fingers of both hands. I am now going to share a story with you, Jason, that I promised I would never tell as long as I lived. Since you are watching this after my death and in the presence of the one whom I promised, I feel comfortable sharing it. As you know, I lived past my 75th birthday and enjoyed what to most people was a long and healthy life. But this was not always a sure thing. I remember when I had just turned 38 years old and was hospitalized with an extreme fever. The doctors were not sure what was wrong with me, so they brought in every specialist from across the country. Finally, I was diagnosed as having a rare kidney disease which was incurable. The only hope they gave me was a new procedure called a kidney transplant. You have got to realize that this was unheard of at that time, and donors were not readily available as they are today. I called Mr. Hamilton, who has always acted as my attorney, and told him we would need to start a nationwide search to find me a kidney. I was very frightened because the specialist had told me that without the transplant, I might not have more than a few weeks. You can imagine my relief when Mr. Hamilton called me 2 days later and told me he had located a kidney on the East Coast. Well, as I am sure you can guess, the operation was a success and gave me back over half of my adult life. But I am sure you could not guess, and what no one has known until now is that the kidney that Mr. Hamilton found was his own. Red paused on the videotape to take a drink of water, and young Jason Stevens stared at me in disbelief. On the big screen, Red continued, "There is only one way in the world to explain something like that, and it is called friendship." Now, Jason, I know you think you have a lot of friends, but the reality is you have a lot of people who simply want your money or the things it will buy. Except for your time with Gus Gladwell, you have never worked a day in your life nor done anything I would call productive. But you have been the life of the party and an easy touch for a lot of weak hangers on you casually call friends. During the next 30 days, I want you to spend a lot of time thinking and observing. I want you to find what you feel to be the principles that underlie true friendship. And I want you to be able to report to Mr. Hamilton an example of true friendship that demonstrates your principles. Jason, you will never do anything in your life that will bring more quality to your existence than growing to understand and nurture friendship. The videotape ended, and Jason seemed to be deep in thought. Finally, he blurted out, "I don't understand." I mean, I interrupted him. "I know you don't understand. That is the whole point. I only hope that you will remember your great uncle's words. And for your sake, by the end of the month, you are at least beginning to understand. I will look forward to your report." I walked out of the conference room, leaving young Jason Stevens to his assignment. On the last day of the month, Miss Hastings called into my office to let me know that Jason had set up an appointment and would be arriving within the hour. I sat back and thought about my lifelong friend, Red Stevens. I was not sure how you would teach someone the depth to which a friendship could grow, especially if the person had never experienced it. Experienced it himself. I will admit to feeling a great sense of doubt and foreboding as I considered Jason's prospects of succeeding in the task Red Stevens had given him. As we gathered around the conference table, Miss Hastings and I were quiet. Both of us were observing Jason's expression and manner. He seemed to have a lot on his mind. He gave us each a perfunctory greeting and muttered, "I hope that, well, I mean, I just don't." Miss Hastings stopped him by saying, "I believe our agenda today involved your report to Mr. Hamilton on your progress with respect to understanding friendship." Jason looked at me doubtfully, and I nodded and gave him a brief smile of encouragement. He began, "I thought a lot about friendship this month, and I tried to come up with the principles that define friendship. The best I can do is to say that friendship involves loyalty, commitment, and a process that includes sharing another person's life. It even goes deeper than that, but it is hard to put into words. The best example of friendship I can give to demonstrate my principle is a story that Gus Gladwell told me when I was working for him in Texas. He explained that when he and Uncle Red Goat started in the cattle business, they had ranches several miles apart, but they and several other ranchers all shared the same range. Each spring, all the ranchers would have what they call a roundup, which apparently involved collecting and branding all of the new calves called yearlings, which had been born since the last roundup. As Mr. Caldwell explained it to me, the young calves simply follow their mothers wherever they go. So, as the cattle are collected, representatives from each ranch are present to brand each new calf with the same brand as its mothers. Well, it seems that early on, Mr. Gladwell was very concerned that Uncle Red was not going to make it as a rancher. So during the roundup one year, Gus simply branded a number of calves that should have been his own with Uncle Red's brand. He told me that he figured that he had been able to give over 30 calves to Uncle Red through that process. But at the end of the roundup, when Gus performed what is called a tally, which is simply counting all the cattle with his brand, he found that instead of being 30 calves short, as he thought he should, he actually had almost 50 more than he started with. Yes, someone else want to read? Or I can go on. Should I go on?
I think Sumanji, you can continue.
Okay, okay. He was confused about that incident for many years until, while Mr. Caldwell and Uncle Red were on a fishing trip, Uncle Red told Gus that when they first got started, he had been worried about Gus making it in the business. Since he didn't want to lose his best friend and neighbor, he had actually branded a bunch of his calves with Gus Caldwell's brand. Jason paused and glanced at both Miss Hastings and me for any sign of approval. He continued that story that Mr. Caldwell told me about my uncle Red best describes how I understand each of the elements of friendship. I know it takes many years to build a friendship like that, but I think somehow it must be worth it. As you know, last month I met Brian when his car broke down at the side of the road. I helped him get a new engine for it, and since then we have done several things together. And I hope that someday we can be friends like Gus Caldwell and my Uncle Red. Jason looked directly into my eyes and said, and I hope I can be as good a friend as you were to Red Stevens. I smiled at him and said, in my best judgment, you have begun your lifetime lesson in friendship. The only thing I can tell you is that any effort you put into a friendship is always returned manifold. I thank Jason for sharing the story about Red Stevens and Gus Caldwell. I had known for half a century that they were both great men and great friends. Jason's story passed to him by Gus Caldwell was just one more example of great friendship. Miss Hastings walked Jason out of the conference room, leaving me alone with my memories. As I sat back in my chair and remembered my lifelong friend, Red Stevens, I reflected that our friendship had begun simply and without either of us understanding what our relationship would grow to be. Jason had learned the beginnings of how to be a friend, and I hoped that his new friendship would blossom into a lifelong treasure, giving him as much pleasure as Red Stevens and I had enjoyed.
Someone else want to read? Krishnan?
I can read Anilji, no problem.
Okay, okay.
Nobody is there, yes. Chapter 6, The Gift of Learning.
Okay. How much time it will take? Okay. Okay, carry on, carry on. It's on 42
Yes,
only.
yes, Ranish, you want to say something?
No, I think can we complete? If we start now, can we complete in next 5 10
Yeah,
minutes?
just a minute. Let me see.
Otherwise, we can.
It's a long chapter, 4 to 5 pages. I think it will take 10 to 15 minutes.
Okay, okay. Fine. Yeah, we can continue.
We can continue.
Okay, okay. Chapter 6, The Gift of Learning. Education is a lifelong journey whose destination expands as you travel. Red Stevens' bequest to his great nephew Jason represented the most unusual and potentially the most important matter I had ever handled for a client or a friend. As we entered the fourth month of our 1 year journey with Jason, I was not sure how much progress we were making. He had shown many signs of improvement, but his belligerent, arrogant, and selfish attitude, born of a life of idle privilege, still showed through from time to time. As we began our monthly ritual around the conference room table, he interrupted the proceedings before Mr. Hastings could even start the videotape. Look, I have done everything you have said up to this point, and this all been well and good. But I need to have some idea of where we are going here and what I get at the end of all of this. I can't just waste a year out of my life. I stared at Jason for several moments and tried to think of what Red would want me to say. Finally, I responded, Jason, it seems to me that your entire life to date has been a series of wasted years. I don't see how this 1 year acquiescence to your great uncle's will could do anything but improve your track record. However, you do have the option to stop this process at any point in time. He fired back at me. Can't you just give me some idea of what I am going to get out of this so I can decide if it is all worth it? I gave him my courtroom stare and stated, Young man, I am bound by honor, duty, and friendship to perform each step of this process as directed by Red Stevens. I have no option in the matter. You indeed do have an option. Either you play or you don't play. But if you are going to play, you are going to play by the rules. Is there any part of that you don't understand? Jason and I locked eyes and we were in a staring contest that represented a test of wills. Unfortunately for him, my will had been tested many, many times over 80 years, and his was only just now being tested due to the love and concern of Red Stevens. He finally looked away and mumbled, Okay, let's play the video. Red Stevens appeared on the screen and seemed to display a bit more intensity than before. It seemed that as we cleared each hurdle, the one before us seemed to take on more importance and significance. Red began, Jason, the next element of the gift I am trying to leave to you encompasses knowledge and learning. As you know, I never had the benefit of a formal education, and I realize that you have some kind of degree from that high toned college we sent you to that is little more than a playground for the idle rich. Jason leaned back in his chair, slammed his fist onto the table, and blew out a long stream of air. Red continued, Now, before you get your feelings all hurt, I want you to realize that I respect universities as well as any type of formal education. It just was not a part of my life. What was a part of my life was a constant curiosity and desire to learn everything I could about the people and world around me. I was not able to go to school very long after I learned to read, but the ability to read, think, and observe made me a relatively well educated man. But learning is a process. You can't simply sit in a classroom and someday walk off stage with a sheepskin and call yourself educated. I believe the reason a graduation ceremony is called a commencement is because the process of learning begins or commences at that point. The schooling that went before simply provided the tools and the framework for the real lessons to come. In the final analysis, Jason, life, when lived on your own terms, is the ultimate teacher. My wealth and success have robbed you of that, and this is my best effort to repair the damage. Red paused for a few seconds, collected his thoughts, and continued. Yeah, scroll up, please. Jason, you are going to be going on a little trip. Mr. Hamilton and Miss Hastings will be accompanying you. Your destination will be the greatest source of learning I ever discovered. If you will keep an open mind, you will find the key to the gift of learning that will serve you all the days of your life. After 1 month in this great place of learning, you must be able to explain to Mr. Hamilton to his satisfaction the fundamental key to all learning, education, and knowledge. Mr. Hamilton has all of the details and will give them to you as you need them. I wish you well. Miss Hastings got up to retrieve the videotape as Jason asked in a bored but resigned tone, where do we have to go and what do we have to do? As I stood and started walking out of the room, I said, Jason, we don't have to go anywhere or do anything. We can stop this process right now. But if you want to continue, be at the airport gate 27 at 7 in the morning. Bring your passport, some summer clothes, and a good attitude. The next morning, we actually met Jason, luggage in hand, crossing the long term parking lot outside of the airport. I called to him, Jason, good morning. I am surprised to see you here a half hour before the plane leaves. He laughed and said, I thought I would try to catch one without running 100-yard dash and squeezing in as they closed the door. Miss Hastings took my arm as we crossed the driveway toward the terminal. She whispered to me, it may be small and slow, but it does seem to be progress indeed. Jason caught up with us and asked, so where are we going? I smiled at him and replied, South America. Jason stopped in his tracks and asked, what university or graduate school is located in South America? Miss Hastings responded to his question cheerily, I am quite certain you have never heard of it. 3 flights later, we found ourselves in a rickety taxi winding along a Just a call again. Yes. Mr. Hastings responded to his question cheerily. I am quite certain you have never heard of it. 3 flights later, we found ourselves in a rickety taxi winding along a dirt road with dense jingle on either side. Eventually, we arrived at a dusty village with dirt sheets and a few dilapidated buildings running along the edge of the jungle. The taxi stopped in front of the largest building on the street, and we got out and retrieved our luggage. As the taxi drove off in a cloud of dust, Jason asked incredulously, are you sure we are in the right place? I laughed and replied, education and learning are where you find them. We got settled into our 3 rooms in the modest but surprisingly comfortable hotel and agreed to meet in the lobby for breakfast the next day. I was very tired and fended off each of Jason's queries by simply telling him that the lesson would begin in the morning. With a hectic day of travel behind me, I slept well and met Miss Hastings in the lobby, where she had already procured a table for us at the edge of what passed for a dining room. Several moments later, Jason arrived and we ate a quick and simple breakfast. As I got from the table, I said, Jason, we are going to walk down to the end of this street. There is a building there where your education will begin. Jason stood and sighed, saying, I have come this far. I may as well see what my crazy great uncle had in his mind. As we walked along the dusty street, the three of us must have made quite a conspicuous sight as many of the local residents came out to look at us. There were many simple wood and sheet metal structures, and as we got to the end of the street, the last building on the left was slightly larger and more modern than the rest. A sign over the door in both Spanish and English read Howard Red Stevens Library. When Jason spotted the name, he began to laugh and asked, What is going on? As I climbed the three steps, as I climbed the 3 steps and opened the door, I said, I think you will find out what you need to know inside. We entered the library and were greeted by a pleasant young woman at the counter. She spoke English very well as she greeted us and said, I assume you are Mr. Hamilton and Miss Hastings. I nodded yes, and her eyes brightened as she looked at Jason and exclaimed, You must be Jason Stevens. We are very proud of you to have you here. Senior Red Stevens was a great man who helped all the people in our village. I cleared my throat and said, Jason, for the next 4 weeks, you will be assisting the librarian in her duties. You will have everything you need here to learn the lesson that your great uncle wants you to learn. Jason raised his voice louder than necessary and stated, I may not have done well in school or learned much in college, but I can't believe that there is anything to be learned in this tiny place that I have not had access to before. Jason turned a complete circle as he surveyed the one room library. This place is made up of mostly of empty shelves. There is only a handful of books here, he observed. The librarian smiled and explained, All of the books are being read by people in our village and for miles around. Your great uncle told us when he gave us this library that books don't do any good sitting on the shelf. I told Jason that Miss Hastings and I would be leaving him to his work, but we would be checking in on him daily. Over the next 4 weeks, I slipped into the pleasant lifestyle of the village. Miss Hastings and I took several side trips and had ample opportunities for sightseeing and the collection of native artwork. The people were all friendly and pleasant, especially as they learned that I represented their late great benefactor, Red Stevens. As we checked on Jason each day, we discovered he was actually going about his task with more energy and diligence than I had expected. He became proficient at getting the books checked in and checked out rapidly, and he would often converse with the library patrons about the books that they had read. As the last day of our scheduled trip arrived, I almost hated to leave the pleasant village. Everyone came onto the street to wish us well, and we departed in what seemed to be the same cab in which we had arrived. After a hard day of traveling, we found ourselves back at the Boston airport where we collected our luggage and walked toward the parking lot. Jason hurried a few steps in front of us, turned to block our path, and said, "Hold it right here. I did everything that you said. I worked hard in the library and I looked at every book they had in that dinky little place. There was nothing new to be learned there. The only thing that I found out is that there are good and simple people who will get up hours before daylight and will walk many miles along mountain trails to get a tattered old copy of a book. The only thing I can honestly say I know now that I didn't know when we left here 4 weeks ago is that the desire and hunger for education is the key to real learning. As Miss Hastings and I stepped around either side of Jason and moved toward the car, I called over my shoulder, "Congratulations, young man. I will see you in the office on Monday and we will discover where we go from here." Miss Hastings and I got our luggage into the trunk of the car, and as we drove through the exit of the airport parking lot, I could still see Jason rooted in the same place, no doubt thinking about the lesson we had all learned. Yes, the chapter is over.
Thank you, Sumanji. It was long reading.
Yeah, I enjoyed, but yeah, thank
Yeah.
you.
So today we have completed three chapters: the gift of money, the gift of friends, and the gift of learning. So these three chapters were really interesting. So this Jason Stevens learned how that the money, friendship, and the learning is important in every life. So this was an interesting read, and that it's a completely storytelling, and by the story that the author is explaining how just these that we in our day-to-day life that we also experience all these things, and these are important. So money, anyways, that the author was explaining that the money is important for the poor also, but for the rich persons that it comes and goes. So they really need to learn how the hard is the money, how that it is important to have the money and how they can spend, because the way that the Jason or he had never earned the money, but he had spent that money. So the way he got the $1,500 and he spent that money, he helped the people. He really uh, learned how that money is important for the poor people or needy people. So that way, that his grand uncle was trying to explain him that this money is important. And the friendship, the real friends, that the how just you can have your friends. So the way that Stephen gave his example, that Mr. Hamilton gave his kidney, that he was not able to find that. That was very interesting. That was very, real friends, that we can have the people we know, but the real friends are those who help in the time of crisis. So that way the friends you should have, you can have the less people, two or three friends, but that are very important, that they can help you in the crisis time. So that way that Red Steven explained his his to Jason, that how he can have the good friends in his life. And the similarly the learning, the gift of learning. So the way that the Jason took the learning, that the for hunger for learning, the hunger and desire for learning is very important to have the learning in life. That was the important lessons that he learned while working in that library. So these three lessons are very important. So far that we have completed six six chapter of this book. So any thoughts, Rajesh ji, from your sides? Mansi, Rajesh ji.
Hi Anil, I think Rajesh is not is in the middle of something or I don't know.
Okay, okay. No issue.
No,
Just
I'm
check
here.
Shanti.
So, if someone has any thoughts, we can discuss. Raj, I will send the summary of this today's learning.
Yeah, good morning, everyone. Sorry, I could not speak earlier. Yeah, today was a good read. Really, these are gifts. So I like the word gifts because you have to have a bit of alignment to receive those gifts. Be it money, be it friendship, and be it learning. So we have to align ourselves to the possibilities of having them in our life, and that's why I like the word gift there. And I could see the character humbling step by step. First basis the incidences that he could share his money with, um, and second is how friendship is important, not just the count of people that you have around. Definitely, that is more relevant to today's life also. That you might have many Facebook friends, but in the time of need, maybe none will be available. Yes, but this also makes me think that really friendship is it only that people are there to support you, possibly in your cases in where you need their help. But I think friendship is also beyond that. You have the confidence, even though you don't end up in a problem, you have a confidence that they are around, they are there to support you in whatever best possible way they can. So I think more than actually helping, they give us a grounding feeling and a support feeling that we have friends, right? And third, on the learning part, yes, um, learning, we'll have to have an urge to learn things, and that's how we actually progress in life. So if I reflect back on life, it is all a different phases of learning and understanding life in a better manner. So I think that is my takeaway for today. Nice tone to the book, a gentle tone, and nice characters the book has built around. So thank you, Anil, for picking the book and making it available for us to read. Yeah, thank you.
No, thank you. It's was great, good sharing. So always the money, friends, and learning. These are the important part of everyone's life. So that way, that we how just we can inculcate all these in our life. Anyways, we know these are the very important thing and we work. So, but how just we can really be more learn from the things that what we observe and the friends what we have, as you rightly mentioned, that the friends who are there to help us in the critical times. So that is important. Anyone else?
Yes.
Yeah,
Yeah, Rajesh, ji, please go on first. Yeah.
yeah. I think whatever we are, I think since yesterday we have been reading uh, different things. Today we have read very important things: money, friendship, and learning. These are all very important, but sometimes we forget, or sometimes we don't give important. Sometimes we don't give any focus on it. I think this author nicely explained with some story and the life lessons. So just we can give some focus on and give importance on these things that will really make impact. It's a nice reading. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Rajesh. Suman?
Yes, yes. Yeah, for me also, otherwise, you all have explained very beautifully. The three learnings, money, friendship, and learning, all were very relatable. We take all these things very easily, that they are easily accessible and we have there. But the real value is that at the right place, we are getting all the things, we are using them in a very right way. As Mani Selvi explained, that alignment to receive the gifts, that is the real worth. And
Yes, correct. Alignment is the real thing. So he that the Jason was aligning himself with these gifts, and he's learning whatever that the his great uncle was trying to give his learning or his experience to him. Then he want that Jason align with that thoughts, and so that he can achieve that the ultimate gift. So that's correct.
yeah, and the Red, he was really a very wise man, how he is portrayed. They are lessons not for Jason, for us as well.
Yes, correct. Correct.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Many times these two things, the money and friendship, we take it as a granted, and we sometimes we don't give value also as long as we have it. But we will know the real importance when it is needed, really needed, or when we don't have it. Especially when we are in a tough time, if you don't have anyone to share your emotions or feelings, then we understand the value of friendship. And as long as you have enough money to the day-to-day life and all those things, whatever fulfilling the life, fulfilling your needs, it's not a problem for the money. But when that is a difficult situation arises, and when we face challenges to do fulfill that important needs or the basic needs, then we know the value of money as well. I think the two parts, whatever we have read, uh, many times we take it as granted, and we know the value when there is a tough time or the tough crisis. Thank you.
Correct, correct, Rajesh. So the money is very important. During the tough times, we get to know that how that the money is important. That the we can understand when we have the tough times, then how that hard and money is very important. And that the emotions, that as you rightly mentioned, that the emotions during the how, just if we have the real friends, we can share our emotions. That time we feel that the how that the friends matter. If you don't have anyone in life to share, then we all say na, that the depression and all these things happens. So if you have the real friends, these things doesn't happen in the life. So this the friends and money and the learning, all these are very important part of our life. We many times ignore these things, but this book has reminded us again. Okay, so should we conclude?
Yes, yes.
Okay, thank you everyone. So I will share the summary of the today's reading. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Have a great day to all.
Thank you. Have a wonderful day.
Thank